How are you today? Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I am Steve Smith. I want to ask you today, are you prepared for probably the greatest threat in our future? And I would say that probably most preppers are not. And I distinguish preppers from what we call PMPs, preparedness minded people. And I'll explain that in a minute. Before we get started, I want to remind you that you can again order my books directly from me, the complete Stonemont series. I think I'm missing one here. Must be in the other room. I don't know. But the complete Stonemont series that I call it, that people say is the best preparedness survival fiction out there. And I won't disagree with those who say that. First one came out in 2017. I call it the complete guide to building preparedness, preparing and surviving and rebuilding after a complete collapse of everything. And that's exactly what it is. We were out for a long time, so I wasn't allowing people to put any more orders in here. But now we have a new shipment in. We're caught up on our deliveries, and I have another shipment coming. They just sell so fast, I had a hard time keeping them in. So you can do that again. You can always get them through Amazon. But if you want to get them from me directly, signed with a little note in there and each one of them for you, you can get them from me again. And I do recommend them. The reversion, the revival, the renewal, an appeal to heaven, the blessings of freedom, hostages to fortune, and the latest one, which is on wings like eagles. And I'll talk a little bit more about this because we're going to talk about technology and the reintroduction of technology. And you can get them through our website, stonemont.us, and the link is down below. And I love doing it. I'll tell you that. I love doing it when people order from me directly, because then I kind of get to know my readers. You know, I get to see their name, I get to see where they're from, and I get to write a personal note. I just love that. So anyway, you can get them from me again directly. The link is down below. So is the Amazon link. Do it how you want. They get them to you fast. I get them to you signed. Okay. If you ask the average prepper if they are prepared, they'll say, well, yeah, I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be. And but I'm pretty prepared and all that. And if you ask them what they're prepared for, most of them will say they are prepared for a crash of some kind. Okay. An economic crash, a crash of the world, a crash of this. That's what my books are about. My books were about a complete collapse of the grid, a CME, an earth-killing CME, Carrington-class CME. Takes out everything, takes us back to the 1840s. And for the first few books, I take us through, how they survive, how they rebuild, everything like that. And it's kind of living in a pre-electric world. And then we go on from there. Now, getting back to the preppers, and the distinction that I make between preppers and PMPs, or preparedness-minded people, are that preppers are those who are prepared or think they are for a limited, and limited can be, anything, for a fairly limited number of scenarios. And like I say, most of it's a collapse. A preparedness-minded person is one who is pretty much prepared for anything and everything. And preppers, those in the lower level there, will say, well, it's impossible to prepare for everything and anything. And the PMPs will say, no, it's not. It takes imagination. It takes a lot of time, effort, energy, money. Yeah, I understand that. But it takes being able to understand and anticipate and open yourself to the possibilities of all the different things that can happen. Now, is it simple? No. Is it fun? Yes. And really, it's the way that preparedness ought to be done, because too many people who consider themselves preppers they find themselves focused on one favorite calamitous scenario or another, and that's what they put everything in: beans and rice and band-aids and bullets and all that, right? Well, I don't think that most preppers are at all prepared for what is probably the biggest danger, the biggest threat that we face. And that is, and I've talked about this before, an increase, if things don't fall apart, okay, but an increasingly technologically advancing world. Now, that doesn't interest a lot of preppers, but it should, because it's probably the most dangerous thing that there is. As a matter of fact, I've said in the past, and many people have said, that probably only a CME, world killing CME, could save us from this increasing, technological world that, well, it provides a lot of good things. It also is a great threat. The increasing surveillance state, we see all that. Now, in the last few days, you've probably heard, if you've been keeping track, of the $500 billion investment that's being put into, and I forget the guy's name, into AI. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was messing around with this, and you might ask why, and I'll explain that in a minute. The thumbnail that I'm going to use on this video, I constructed the middle part with AI. Okay. Oh, Steve, I'm going to stop watching this right now. I'll have nothing to do with AI. Let me pull you back here a minute, Haas, and tell you why you're wrong. Okay. And I did that because I was playing around with it. I said, okay, I want to understand more of this. And I have asked some of our Tier 1 commenters and patrons over on the Patreon site. That reminds me, if you're not with us on Patreon, you ought to be. And the link is right down below. We have some, not just extra stuff that I put on, but some super sharp people over there who share their knowledge. And you'll like it. You'll get a lot out of it. And I've asked some of them to kind of try to clue me, bring me up to speed a little bit on AI, machine learning, and all this kind of stuff. And to the extent of my ability to understand it, they have. But I was just messing around with this, and I thought, okay, let me see, since I'm going to talk about this, let's see what I can do with generating a picture. And the picture that you see in the center of the thumbnail, I generated by saying, I think, only family running away from or chased by robots in a dystopian future or world, whatever. That's what I put, and that's what you got. Okay. Now we know, and I just sent a friend of mine a whole thing of AI future, and it's amazing. If you haven't looked at, I know that a lot of people think that this is a danger for one reason or another. Some feel that it's a danger biblically. Others feel that it's a danger simply from a privacy standpoint. And yes, I will agree with that first part. The second part. The first part, well, that's up for debate. Maybe I'll get to that in just a second. Because I am going to make another one, maybe today, about beware of and avoid the fear mongers. There's a lot of people out there trying to, sell you snake oil and make you all afraid of things. That's really not what this is about. This is to warn you, okay, and warn you in order for you to prepare for it, not to be afraid of it. So this thing with AI, you've heard, all the money is being put into AI. Well, what do you know about AI? Okay? And when I talk to a lot of people, I get a lot of people say, I don't want to know, I don't know, I don't want to know, I'm not going to get involved in that, right? Or many other things, right? Well, most situations you have a choice to run, hide, or fight. And too many people in the preparedness world want to run and hide. And usually that's not the way out of a problem. When I used to teach martial arts, I would explain to people, or ran self-defense classes for women or combatives classes for men or whatever. I'd say very often the way to deal with a problem is not away from it or around it, but through it. And you have to fight your way through it. And in order to do that, you have to have the skills necessary in order to do it. Okay. Part of that is to understand your opponent, your adversary, your enemy, however you want to put it. And if you don't, you're not going to be as effective as you could be if you do. And so here's where I'm getting with this. Most preppers, as opposed to PMPs, want nothing to do with new technology, or AI especially. Okay. And they have taken this road of running and hiding. If AI increases like it apparently is, you're not going to be able to run and hide. And you ought to be frightened about that. And I said this isn't a fearmonger, but you ought to be, okay, very concerned. You ought to understand that. You ought to accept that. You're not going to be able to hide. Now, let me take this, because I see we're coming at a fork in the road here. Biblically or non-biblically. Many people, and I check on other channels because I want to see what's going on in the preparedness world, right? And there are a lot of fearmongers out there telling you that this is the end of the world. There have always been these death cults. There have been, and I'm not telling you, I made one before. Are we in the end times? Yes, we're in the end times. I have no idea how long those end times are. If you want to speak religiously, it could be next week. It could be 10,000 years from now. Okay. Now, there are those who want to convince you that all of this stuff, I hear a lot of this beast system, mark of the beast, you're not going to be able to buy or sell, all blah, 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 blah. And I won't say, excuse me, just a second. I am getting a call on the other phone. Okay, that was my brother. Wasn't that a pretty sound? Some of you know that I'm switching from Android to iPhone. I'm still not comfortable shooting these on my iPhone, so I'm still on the Android, which frees up my iPhone to do other things. Now, there are those who will tell you this is all the beast system. Stay away from it. Don't, blah, 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 blah. Let me just insert something here. We're not going to get into a big theological discussion. And if you try to, if you come on and you leave, 9 miles of comment, giving me all sorts of scriptures, guys, probably most of which I'm fully aware of. I'm going to take it off because this is not the place for that. You feel free to promote your position on your channel. Okay. But here is where I'm presenting my position and my advice. There have always been these cults who assure you that whatever it is that's happening is the mark of the beast. It's the beast system, all this. And many of you aren't aware that the apostles themselves fully expected for Jesus to return during their lifetimes. And there is much evidence that will say, and there are many differing views, okay, in theological interpretation and investigation. But every generation since Jesus' resurrection has thought that his return was going to be in their lifetime. And there is a large school of thought that everything in Revelation, I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying that this is it's a position worth investigating and understanding if you are open-minded enough to. I'm not open-minded. The Bible says this. Oh, yeah, that's right. The Bible says. So are you willing to read everything and understand everything that it says? Or just your little slice that you're already convinced of? But there's a large theological school of thought that everything in Revelation happened by 70 AD. Did you realize that? Most people don't know that. Well, I'm putting that over to the side here because that's not really our point. I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that I am aware of that. Okay. Here is the other option that this is not the mark of the beast, but this is, as I said before, simply a continuing, increasingly technological world. People have always been held back because of their fear of the future, fear of the unknown, and the future is unknown, right? So fear of the unknown, people don't want to deal with it. They're much happier staying where they are. How many people do you know like that? I bet you've been like that sometime in your life. So have I. I'll be honest with you. I don't like technology. I would be very happy living in my cabin in the woods with my horses and, whatever. That's a dream life to me, but it's not the life that I live because I do many other things. Okay. And technology assists me in that. Technology helps you in your life. I don't care how base you live. You rely on some technology, and everybody has to decide at what point will they stop. Well, yeah, I don't like technology. Oh, well, I like it up to this point to where it helps me, but I don't want it anymore. My kids will tell you I'm very technology averse. I'm always asking them, how do I turn on the TV? But the thing that's to my detriment. So if this is not, and you have to accept that this may not be, well, you don't have to accept it if you want. What if it's not the beast system? What if it's, because there were people, saying, oh, the telegraph, right? The telegraph, that's the end times. That's the mark of the beast. What, being able to speak over miles and miles, that's not of God, right? The telephone, the vehicles, automobiles, no, we're not going to do that. No, Social Security numbers, well. Yeah. So anyway, are you prepared for what this very well could be? And that is simply a continuation of the evolution of technology in our world. Okay? If you're not, you're going to be at a great disadvantage in dealing with it. And it could prove a threat, a danger to you. Now, I know that most people, well, I don't know if I'd say most. I'd say probably come to young people are very enthralled with the new technology. So were you. Okay, I bet you that your parents didn't like the clothes you wore, unless you wore the same overalls your dad did. But most people, our parents, they didn't like the music that we listened to. We're always ragging on the music they listened to. Our parents did too. They didn't like the way we dressed. They didn't like the way we wore our hair. They didn't like the new technology was just stupid. There was no need for it. It wasn't like the old days. Well, things weren't like this when I was younger, right? They didn't realize their parents, they probably forgot their parents said the same thing about them. And our kids are going to say same things about them, their kids, unless they're smart enough to realize the natural evolution of humankind, right? So here's my question. Since this very possibly is the simple continuing evolution of technology, how prepared are you to deal with it? Because it could have drastic effects on employment, on pretty much everything you do. We travel a lot. And I travel a lot. Well, sometimes we travel for pleasure, but most of the time we travel for work, for business. Kelly has painted tree booths up in Nebraska and Iowa and Austin. And I of course, I write books. And so I travel a lot for research. If I write about an area, I like to go see it and learn about it. I don't like to just sit behind the desk and tap at what I'm making things up. Even though that's what a lot of writers do, right? So, hang on half a second. Somebody else called me. Okay, so as we travel, we stop by a lot of places. We'll grab something to eat at different places, and I'm old school. I mean, drive-ins. When I was a kid, was you drove in, you spoke in a speaker, and the car hop brought it out to you, right? Well, now they have drive-throughs. I guess that's the proper term for it. They have drive-throughs. Well, Kelly and the kids, all of them, they have all these apps on their phones. And so when we're coming up to, someplace, we're going through a town, Kelly will look on, she said, what does everybody want to eat? And they'll also, where do you want to eat? And she'll look on it and see where that place is. It could be fast food. It could be a Panera. It could be whatever. And she'll look for the location and get on their menu. And what do you all want? And they'll tell her, and she'll put the order in on her phone, right? And then through their app. And to me, I barely know what an app is. But when we'll get there, and it'll be ready for us. And half the time she has to remind me, especially at McDonald's, what to say. She'll say, just say, I have an app order 7249. And I go, that's all I have to say? Yes, it's already been paid for. I've already paid for it. They'll tell you to come to the window. It is so simple. So while I'm driving, she's putting in the order. We get there, and I go to the speaker and say 7249 or whatever it is, right? and they say, pull around, sir. And I pull around, they give me my stuff, and off we go. Amazing, right? But, I mean, to me, probably most of you are laughing and go, well, yes, that's hardly magic. Well, it kind of is to me. The thing is, they're always getting, my oldest son is always leaving in the evening to go because he has some awards someplace. He said, well, I have a free something over here because for using their app, and I have a free something over here. And Kelly's all the time getting free stuff off these apps. It saves me a lot of money. And you know what some people will say? They'll say, well, yeah, but they're getting all your information. You're selling yourself. They're getting all the information from you. Yeah, they get information that I want a double cheese. I'm not afraid of that. Ooh, this guy likes a double cheese, a large fry, and a large Dr. Pepper. Oh my gracious. Okay. What I'm saying is this. There's a lot of technology out there that helps. Many of us are resistant. I use myself as an example, so you know I'm not just pointing at you as the resisting of technology. Why? Because then I'd have to learn something, right? And I have enough on my plate. I have enough to do, I tell myself. I could learn it. But in this case, this is more important than ordering through an app in a drive-thru. This is what your future may be. Okay? And you can be an old dog. I'm an old dog, but it's up to us whether we're willing to learn new tricks or not, right? And that old dog who won't learn a new trick, he's not going to have near the fulfilled life. And I can see somebody say, well, I'm not a dog and I'm not going to do tricks and jump through their hoops. And come on, man, it's a figure of speech. But it's up to us whether we use the coming technology for our benefit, and then also this, to understand the technology to the extent that we need to in order to differentiate between that which is helpful and that which is a threat. Okay? And no, it's not all a threat, but some is. And unless you know about it, you won't be able to, number one, distinguish which it is, and then fight against it, resist it. In my books, I'll get back to that. In my books, by I think the third or fourth book, I reintroduce technology. How do I do that? I reintroduce vehicles, putting together essentially go-karts with these Predator engines you get at Harbor Freight, right? There's no electronics in it. Back when I wrote the books, there's this thought that anything with electronics in it, meaning modern vehicles, wouldn't work. Now they've come to, think, well, that's not exactly right. Probably most vehicles will work. But anyway, that's where my books were set. But I taught the greater lesson of now we're reintroducing some technology. Well, how can you do that? Because all of the, somebody will ask, because you can't get any gas out of the pumps and the gas stations because that's on electricity. Yeah, we didn't. You know what I had them do? Opened up a bunch of gas and oil wells, they're all over the place where I live. Well, just south of where I live, but where Stonemont is located. And did you know that it's not that difficult to refine? It's not going to be the high-grade quick trip stuff, but you can refine crude fairly easily into diesel and gasoline and kerosene. It takes the knowledge. In the group are engineers who know how to do that. And they did it. They just opened up some of those wells. That's why whenever I look for land, I look for land with oil on it. And you can find them. A lot of these oils all these wells are capped, depending on the price of crude, makes it, determines whether it's willing or worthwhile to open them up or not. But then, so I reintroduced this. You know what's in I'm not going to give away the whole thing, but in the 7th book, some of you haven't read the 7th book. I'm not going to give you the whole story away. In the 7th book, you know why it's called On Wings Like Eagles? Because I reintroduce airplanes. Here's the thing. Why? How could there possibly be airplanes? Because if a CME hits, as I've said many times before, we're not going back to the Stone Age. We're going back to pre-electricity. We haven't lost the knowledge. We may have lost the hardware of the technology, but we haven't lost the knowledge. So it's just a matter of going back and doing things like they did in the old days. Dams created electricity before, chips, right? Okay. So it's just a matter of doing it. And one of the lessons there, and when we're coming up, I had somebody ask me, are there going to be more books? Yes, I'm working on the 8th book now, and looks like there's going to be a 9th and a 10th. I think I'm going to need 2 more books after the one I'm working on now to bring everything to a conclusion in the Stonemont series. But the lesson is, there is no stopping technology. There is no stopping technology. And whether you keep up with things or not is entirely up to you. Technology is simply the measure of man's insistent desire to discover and create. Okay? I mean, I could get deeper than that, but that's it. We're always going to try to find things out that we don't know. What's on the other side of the mountain? Said the mountain man, right? Well, what is a subatomic particle, says the physicist. There's no difference between those two. It's all about what don't we know. A lot of preppers identify with the mountain man. They don't identify with the physicist. You see, it's all part of the human condition. And in order to be truly prepared, in order to be a PMP, you have to be prepared for everything, which means you have to consider the possibility of everything and be willing to learn about it. Because if you're not, I used to have a saying, either you do life or it'll do you. And that's the truth. That's the true measure of preparedness. So don't let these fearmongers scare you back to living a very basic. I mean, if you want to live a basic life, like I said, I could be happy living a very basic life. I'm a basic guy. I could live in the woods and be just fine. My family doesn't want to live in the woods, and so I'd rather live with my family than in the woods. So here I am. Okay. Someday, if we all have to, we will. But don't let these people scare you about this being the beast system, because it might be, but it might not be. And if you're determined that it's one thing, you will fail to consider anything else. And life and decisions are all about understanding variables, right? Options. All right. Y'all have a good day. Again, remind you, if you want the books from me, again, I just hit you. Are you all right? I didn't mean to knock you sideways. If you want the Stonemont series from me, get to our website, stonemont.us, order the whole set from me. I get to sign them, write a little note into you, and you will love the books. You will love the series. I'll guarantee you that. Okay? Y'all have a great day. Remember, I keep knocking you. That's because it's on my desk. Okay? I keep knocking you. Have a great day. And remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.